Dear grade 11 students, how are you all? Okay, today we're going to do grammar chapter 27, parts 3 and 4. First section 3, semicolons and colons. The semicolon and the colon are similar looking. They look almost the same, punctuation marks with very different uses. They are used differently. A semicolon can be used to establish a relationship between two or more independent clauses and also to prevent confusion in sentences containing other internal punctuation marks. A colon, on the other side, can be used as an introductory device to point ahead to additional information like a list or something else for clarification and in other special situations. First, the semicolon. Semicolons are used to connect two independent clauses containing similar or contrasting ideas. Often, the independent clauses connected by a semicolon are similar to each other in structure as well as in meaning. Use a semicolon to join independent clauses that are not already joined by the conjunction and, but, for, not, or, so, or yet. In other words, as you know, a semicolon replaces any of these conjunctions plus the comma. A semicolon is not the most common way to separate independent clauses. In most cases, they are joined with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And as I said earlier, a semicolon replaces both the comma and the conjunction. Example, the first lady is married to the president. This is an independent clause, but her role is also very important. Here we have a comma, but between the two independent clauses. So when you write a sentence containing two or more independent clauses and no coordinating conjunction, however, use a semicolon instead of a comma to join them. Okay, so again, a semicolon equals a comma plus a conjunction. The semicolon is a stronger punctuation mark than a comma. It replaces both the comma and the conjunction. Do not capitalize the word following the semicolon unless the word is a proper noun or a proper adjective. Martha Washington was the first lady or the first lady. She was married to George Washington. Sometimes the first word of a second independent clause is a conjunctive adverb or a transitional expression. Use a semicolon to join independent clauses separated by either a conjunctive adverb or a transitional expression. Conjunctive adverbs are adverbs used as conjunctions to connect independent clauses. Common conjunctive adverbs are accordingly, also, besides, consequently, furthermore, however, indeed, instead, namely, nevertheless, otherwise, similarly, therefore, and thus. Transitional expressions are expressions that connect one independent clause with another. Transitional expressions include, as a result, at this time, first, for instance, in fact, on the other hand, second, and that is. Conjunctive adverbs, we think, an example, we think of Washington, D.C. as the nation's capital. Then we have a semicolon, however, comma, the capital used to be in New York City. Then the capital moved to Philadelphia. Therefore, the first family moved as well. Transitional expressions, Martha Washington entertained graciously. In fact, she set a precedent for first ladies. She enjoyed her role as hostess. On the other hand, there was a great deal of pressure to set a good example. See how the semicolon is used here before this transitional expression, which is in fact, and the other transitional expression, which is on the other hand. Another use of the semicolon is with independent clauses or series that already contain a number of commas. The use of a semicolon can help prevent confusion in these sentences. So use a semicolon to avoid confusion when independent clauses or items in a series already contain commas. Like the example here, Abigail Adams, who was descended from a prestigious colonial family, had little formal education. Still, she was an eager reader. Here we have a comma, and here we have a comma, and here we have a semicolon. Items in a series, she read inspirational works like the Bible and philosophy, religious sermons and essays, nonfiction, including historical accounts, and she turned to her husband, John, for further instruction. In the preceding example, semicolons are used to separate the three major parts of the series. Commas are used within the major parts of to set off the modifying participial phrases. When items in a series contain appositives or adjective clauses, semicolons should also be used to separate the major parts of the series, like the example above. Exercise 30, we're going to do number 1, 2, and 3. If we look at the example, here the question, insert semicolons where necessary. Some of the sentences may require only a comma to separate independent clauses. Look at the example. Abigail Adams had great curiosity. In fact, she was to become one of the most well-read women in America. Here, Abigail Adams had great curiosity, and we put the semicolon before the transitional expression in fact and complete the sentence. Number 1, reading was a common interest of Abigail, and we have and here, her husband, therefore, it acted as a strong bond between them. So in this sentence, sorry, after her husband and her husband, reading was a common interest of Abigail and her husband. We put a semicolon here before therefore, and of course, you know, there is a comma after it. Number 2, John Adams went to Harvard and there he studied for a career in law. All we need here is a comma before the word and, because we have two independent clauses. John Adams went to Harvard and he studied for a career in law there. Number 3, they were married in 1764. At this time, this is a transitional expression, so we need a semicolon after the year 1764, and we already have the comma after the word time. Let's move on to the colon. So the colon is a distinctive punctuation mark with a number of important uses. One important use of the colon is to introduce a list following an independent clause. Use a colon before a list of items following an independent clause. Dolly Madison entertained all kinds of people. What kinds are to be mentioned here? Politicians, diplomats, and so we have a list. Before this list, we use the colon. Okay. Another example: the United States government has 3 branches. Here we have the colon, and then we mention the 3 branches: the executive, legislative, and judicial. Details may be listed without using a colon. Compare the following examples with the preceding ones. Dolly Madison entertained all kinds of people, including politicians. Here we don't have the word including in this sentence, so we have the colon. Here we have a comma and including and commas. Okay, the United States government consists of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the, so these we have details here. Here we have the items of the list only. In each of the examples above, the list is not preceded by an independent clause, so no colon is used. Always make sure that an independent clause precedes the list before you insert a colon. The independent clause before a list often begins or ends in a phrase such as the following or the following items, signaling the need for a colon. So look for the words, the following or the following items. This or these words signal the need for a colon. Use a colon to introduce a quotation that is formal or lengthy, or a quotation that does not contain a he said or she said expression. Look at the example. In the Living White House, Rosalind Carter writes about the history of the White House. And then we have a colon. I also have, we have a long quotation, and it doesn't have he said or she said, so we need a colon before the quotation. A casual quoted remark or dialogue should be introduced by a comma, even if lengthy. Use a colon only for more formal, like this, for more formal quotations, and for those without he said or she said expressions. Use a colon to introduce a sentence that summarizes or explains the sentence before it. Mary Todd Lincoln was very active during the Civil War. Colon, she visited hospitals. Here, this list shows how she was active. She visited hospitals, read to the soldiers, wrote them letters, and raised money. So we have a list or some details. Again, use a colon to introduce a sentence that summarizes or explains the sentence before it. As you see in the preceding example, the colon serves as an introductory device for the sentence that amplifies the preceding sentence. Notice that a capital letter followed the colon. A capital letter here, she begins with a capital letter before the words following make a complete sentence. She visited hospitals, read to the soldiers. Here, this is a sentence. We have a subject and a verb. Use a colon to introduce a formal appositive that follows an independent clause. A colon is a stronger mark than a comma, like the semicolon. Both are stronger than a comma. So using a colon gives more emphasis to the appositive it introduces. Mrs. Lincoln strongly supported the main Union policy, anti-slavery. Anti-slavery, this is an appositive. We could have used a comma here, but this is stronger and more formal. Stronger, sorry, and more formal. The colon has a number of other uses as well. Look at the chart here. Special situations requiring colons. Time expressed in numerals like 710, 1201. References to periodicals, volume number, page number. Here, Psychology Today, volume number 24, page number 189. Science, volume number 169, pages 611, 612. Biblical references, chapter number, verse number. Deuteronomy, this is chapter 4, verse 11. Subtitles of books and magazines. The causes of World War I, a chronology of events. A chronology of events. Salutations in businesses or business letters. Gentlemen, dear Ms. Wells, usually we use a comma, but here business letters we use a colon. Labels used to signal important ideas. Warning, trespassers will be prosecuted. Okay, so let's move on to exercise 31, understanding the use of the colon. Here, look at the example. Insert colons where necessary. Eleanor Roosevelt was sent to boarding school in England when she was young 15 years old. Young 15 years old, written without anything in between. Of course, here we have some detail or explanation, so we need the column before 15 years old. Number one, have a look at number one. Where should we put the comma or the colon? Sorry. Eleanor Roosevelt was the first of the modern first ladies for one major reason. We have a capital S. So we need a colon before this word here. Number two, upon returning home to New York, she married her distant relative. What's his name? Here it's a positive, Franklin Roosevelt. So before Franklin here, we put a colon. Number three, she became involved in various women's groups. The League, we have examples or details of these groups. So we put a colon before the word the here. This is in exercise 32, add semicolons and colons where appropriate. Let's do the first three sentences. Exercise 32. Let's read the example first. Jacqueline Kennedy was first lady during the administration of her husband, John Kennedy. So we need something here before John Kennedy, or we put the colon. Number one, if we just maximize the screen a little bit. Number one, while Mrs. Kennedy lived in the White House, she had it restored and redecorated. As a result, it was declared a national museum. So we need, what do we need? We need a semicolon before as a result, a transitional expression. Number two, she wrote a book to raise funds to this project. What's the name of this book? The White House, an Historic Guide. So we need a colon before the White House here, and we have a colon, another colon here before an historic guide. Number three, she searched old government buildings for antiques and worked with antique experts, in fact. So before in fact, as you can see, we have a transitional expression. We need a semicolon before in fact here. And she even asked citizens to send back White House furnishings to other items that had been sold. So we've come to the end of chapter 27, section 3. Thank you very much.